Hey everybody, welcome to the Rambling Knave. I'm Noah, coming at you solo for a very special bonus episode. Today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 albums of the year, with some bonus stuff thrown in, because that's what I do. So if you're interested in hearing what I heard and enjoyed all this year, stick around, or maybe you just want to possibly pick up some new bands to get into, also stick around. Make sure to like and subscribe and do all that, and I will see you again in roughly 7 seconds. Welcome back. As I said, I'm Noah. This is the Rambling Knave. This is a bonus content episode. As you can see, I'm without my wingman here, so it's just me. Mostly because Brandon, I don't think, listens to any music, and any music that Misha gets comes right from this guy anyway, so, you know, it just made sense for one voice to be heard here. Now then, list season's kind of stupid. You know, I'll give it that. Like, how do you quantify a year's worth of music down to like a top 10 or even a top 15? It's an arbitrary number, top 25. Well, I just like doing it because, you know, people love lists. And for me, this has nothing to do with like my taste versus yours. Obviously, my taste is a little eclectic. I'm into death metal. Not a grand lot of people are into death metal. So a lot of these picks are going to be metal picks. There's a couple here and there that aren't. So you can tune in. You know, you can keep tuning in now, or you can just walk right away if like, I don't care about the next new death metal band. That's fine. Again, this is not about taste. For me, I do it because I love getting people into new music. And for me, like going through list season, that helps get like, you know, find things I missed throughout the year. And as a matter of fact, one of the albums on here came from a list from one of the writers at Last Rites, which is a really cool metal review website, that I missed the album, and then when I listened to it, it immediately landed. So, you know, I do things like that. So this is more of a, hey, here's X number of bands you might not have heard before that you might want to. So that said, I think I listen to too much music sometimes. So cramming down to 10 was hard. So what I did was I took 10 and then have a secondary pick. So technically this is a top 20. Alright, now before we launch into this, I want to just go over, with all the music coming out, there are some that were bound to disappoint. And sadly, the Mountain Goats didn't really care for their new album, and I usually love them. Devin Townsend had one that I was just not into. And then the big one was Tool. Like, that one was hard. You know, like, you wait 13 years for this, you know, brand new epic album, and then you just get a bunch of, like, it's not bad, it's just I felt like I've heard it before. Like, they took pieces and parts of B-sides or stuff that didn't make it to, you know, the previous albums, and then just smashed them together and called them songs. And for a band that, you know, is a progressive rock band, it didn't sound very progressive. It sounded like cutting room floor bits. Now that said, songs like Pneuma and Tempest are phenomenal, and with the very tragic passing of Neil Peart as of like 4 days ago, that leaves Danny Carey as the inarguable greatest drummer living. So there's that. It was just, on the whole, like an hour and a half of it could have been cut down to like, you know, 50 minutes, and it was just kind of a disappointment, you know. So let's slide those on, because there is plenty of new stuff to get into. Get right down into the list. Number 10, Cult of Luna, A Dawn to Fear. And Misha should be able to put up JPEGs of the album cover in one of these great big open spots behind me here, hopefully this time. Now, okay, so Cult of Neurosis post-metal, it was a thing. It used to be a thing, but now that's pretty well passé. ISIS is dead, Neurosis takes their sweet-ass time, and many of those upstarts, you know, copycat bands of there have long faded or changed their sound. So this leaves Cult of Luna to kind of keep running the torch. Hallmarks of the genre, they're great big songs, loud, soft, louder, dynamic, crescendos aplenty, but most of the songs are built on, you know, this rising action to a epic finish. Deeply layered arrangements. You know, most of the bands are more than, you know, typical 4 or 5 member set. They're up into like 7, 8, you know, 2, 3 guitars, keyboards, atmospherics, all that. So basically what post-metal is the heavier version of Tool without all the deliberately screwy time signatures and incorporating harsh vocals. So, on this album there are 3 main set pieces. We have the opener, The Silent Man, which begins with this really martial beat that's going to have you nodding along whether you want to or not. It's a great song. The Lights on the Hill is the 15-minute centerpiece, and it keeps building and building until you just don't think it's going to build anymore, and then it just falls just enough, and then comes right back into like build even more into this like violently hypnotic ending where you're just sucked into the whole 15 minutes. It's wonderful. So it's just, yeah, there's just that magnificently beautiful, you know, set piece in the middle there. And then finally, the closing song is probably my favorite song on the album, The Fall. It's built on a foundation of 2 of their like finest signature chunky riffs that this band does so well. And then just when you think like, oh, that's it, it's over, that was so cool. You know, there's this false ending and then boom, back with like more chunky riff goodness. It's awesome. So Cult of Luna's coming in at number 10. So now you're thinking, wait, you said harsh vocals. I'm not into harsh vocals, and I get it. A lot of people aren't. So my alternate pick is the new Mono album, Nowhere Now Here. So it's like, it's still got these, and they're post-rock. Okay, they're post-rock. So there's already like, hey, it's it's not metal, it's more instrumental. Actually, it's almost all instrumental. So there's no screaming vocals, so you can get by on that. But they're Japanese, they've been around for like 25 years, they're awesome. So it's the same idea where it's these instrumental songs that are a little more emotive. The song called Sorrow, and the actual music within is kind of sounds like what that would feel like, what sorrow would feel like, where it's just kind of mopey, and then it, you know, builds and crushes. So really it's like less like being in an earthquake and more like standing next to a jet engine as it begins to take off. Maybe that's not the best descriptor, but it's heavy, but it's not heavy in the same way. Number 9, Bad Religion, The Age of Unreason. Okay, normally I don't go for politics in my music. Most of the time I like what I'm listening to be kind of a distraction from, you know, maybe how shitty the world is currently, or, you know, and so I don't really like to double dip. But of course, punk rock is political by nature and how it started, so maybe that's why I don't get down with as much punk as I used to. But Bad Religion is one of those punk bands I think I'm always going to keep in heavy rotation. And the thing I admire most about them is, you know, while yeah, they're a political band, they kind of keep their subjects vague enough that they don't date themselves. You know, like Dead Kennedys did this thing where they would like name check and have some very specific like names and events, and then, you know, now they're kind of like, well, that doesn't really apply, sorta, but when, you know, like, it doesn't. Bad Religion kind of keeps things vague enough that, like, you know what they're talking about now, but there's no specific thing, so like, you know, 10 years later you're going to come back and you're going to be able to apply this, you know, later, or you're not going to know exactly what they were talking about then unless you were with it. And it keeps, there's a little more longevity there. The other thing I think they do really well is they differentiate their songs. Every song has its own identity, and that's a trapping of a lot of punk rock, is you feel like at some point you're listening to the same song kind of over and over again, whereas on Bad Religion they kind of, at least on this album and most of their other albums, there's, you know, you can tell one song from the other. Like on this side, this one, Do the Paranoid Style sounds completely different from Candidate, sounds completely different from Big Black Dog. Like, you know what song you're listening to. And I think this is their strongest album since Empire Strikes First. Every song is catchy, and like even the gross one that sounds like a low-rent Alkaline Trio ripoff. And I like Alkaline Trio, it was just, this song was like, ugh. It's a really, you know, cleverly written punk album. Lyrics are topical, yet, you know, they've got legs into, you know, the next generation. And again, you can listen to it and know what song you're on. So for my alternate pick here, it's not a punk rock song, and this is really to make up for showing up late to the modern jazz party, showing up late to the party on modern jazz group Sons of Kemet. This is Theon Cross, and he is the tuba player, yes, the tuba player, for Sons of Kemet, and this is his solo project. And up until I heard Sons of Kemet earlier this year, I didn't realize how badly I needed a tuba-centric jazz band in my life. This is, I guess it's jazz, but it's not like some cuckoo wacky bebop jazz or like some Miles Davis psychedelic trip that takes 25 minutes a song. Like, this is pretty accessible stuff. Like, he incorporates a lot of hip hop beats, reggae's in there. There's a lot of Afro beat, and I think the tribal drum, the African drumming, that really sets it off. Like, again, I love a good beat. And this is like an album that you could throw on at parties and not clear the room. Like, it's good. I mean, it's got mellow moments too to come down from the bangers, but I really do recommend this album. Number 8, Tanith, In Another Time. Do you like Thin Lizzy? Correct, you like Thin Lizzy. Tanith have those dual guitar harmonies that the Liz perfected in spades. They also feature the guitar player from Resurrected Nwabemers, Satan. So right out the gate, they've got some serious cred just built in. Like that band, this band plays old school heavy metal. The opening track is just fucking spectacular. Like, you get the screaming riffs, you get a male-female vocal trade-off, which creates a really cool dynamic. You've got the vocal melodies are just super. Like, you're gonna hear them, and you're gonna they're not gonna immediately hit you, but you're gonna want to go back to it because something's there. It's got this just beautiful, warm 70s bass tone that no one does anymore. It's a fantastic song, and after that you've got the whole album to look forward to. And I mentioned Thin Lizzy and Satan, but I think for a more contemporary comparison, I even hear a lot of Hammers of Misfortune or Slough Fag, who are also big names in the trad prog kind of classic heavy metal sound. And this is just like old school metal at its finest. And this is the one that I mentioned earlier that I picked this up, I heard it from a list, and I heard it on New Year's Eve, and I stayed up later than I wanted to because I needed to hear this album. So I didn't even get to spend that much time with it, and it already landed at 8, and it might even be higher if I had it if I picked it up in May, I think, when it came out. I would have, this has got some serious, it's a great album that I think I'm going to be listening to for a long time. So if you like trad metal, pick this up. My alternate pick is a band called Traveler, and they're from Canada, and they are also trad metal. Trad metal had a good year, and we're going to talk about that on another episode too. Traveler sounds a lot like Angel Witch, which is awesome. So really, what you're doing is, when you put this album on, it's going to make you want to break out the denim and leather, grow your hair out, buy an IROC Z, disappoint your parents. It's just a really good traditional heavy metal record. Number 7, Darkthrone, Old Star. Okay, so Darkthrone are the Motorhead of black metal, and yeah, I think that sentence sums up how much they rule, and I'm not going to waste any more of your time trying to explain how awesome Darkthrone are. They're just awesome, so they're at number 7. Okay, so alternatively, if black and roll isn't your thing and you dig consistency in your bands, Niall came back with a really strong album this year, Vile Nilotic Rites, and it's Niall. It's Egyptian themed death metal. It's heavy, it's brutal, it's technical, it's a Niall album. So this one also came with the moment that I nerded out to hardest. Where on the 4th track, the intro is actually the Godzilla theme, which obviously I'm a Godzilla fan. If you haven't looked at my ranking of the full 32 films on the same channel, you can go do that after this. But yeah, when you hear the Godzilla theme just out of nowhere, you're like, fuck, that's Godzilla. I don't know what the song actually has to do with Godzilla, but it's there and it's cool. Also, the song Snake Pit Mating Frenzy is fucking awesome, and that's a dope name for a song. So, Darkthrone and Niall. 2 consistently awesome bands that I'm not going to talk about anymore because they're consistently awesome. Number 6. Kripp Sermon, The Ruins of Fading Lights. And man, okay, this one was a hard pick. So basically, Kripp Sermon is a newer, younger version of Candlemas. And both bands are epic doom, which means like they've got soaring vocals and heavy yet melodic riffs and like fantasy occulty themes. So basically, their Candlemas was the next logical progression from Black Sabbath, and Kripp Sermon is the next logical progression from Candlemas. So the hard part here was because Candlemas also put out an album this year. So, is it fair for me to pick, the new young upstarts who have a very awesome album, or do I have to go, fall back on, the Masters are still, playing, it's one of those like, Tom Brady still plays football, but like, maybe, there might be a better quarterback out there, Aaron Rodgers, like, like a new young, Lamar Jackson. Is it fair to pick Lamar Jackson over Tom Brady? Like maybe this year, he was better, but like I'm digressing into football, but you get what I mean. So I had that, decision to make, and ultimately, obviously, I ended on Kripp Sermon. The new band is starting to take, bigger strides in what Candlemas is doing. Like, Kripp Sermon, I think, has the better riffs at this point because they incorporate, this traditional, the traditional gallopy stuff in there and like some screaming leads. The leads are actually like really the thing that put it over the top. Whereas, Candlemas, despite being like the ambassadors of doom metal, like they have kind of this plodding sort of chunky, sound, and the new album has like sort of like start-stop things that I have a little issue with. But anyway, but just like going through Kripp Sermon, you got the riffs, you've got these like really catchy melodies. The opening track, the Templar's Flame or something, the Ninth Templar, Black Candle Flame, the Beneath the Torchfire Glare. These songs are like they're epic, but they're like catchy. Even like old heshers of the scene can get into this, as well as like some of the newer people, and it's just, I think this album's great, and I went a little off the rails here. Maybe I didn't have a great write-up for that, but it was just like riffs, the vocals, and like the leads, the riffs and the leads, man. Like that's what you gotta say, really, the riffs and the leads. So my alternate pick is obviously Candlemas, because like despite some hiccups here and there, they did write the best song about an intergalactic octopus god, featuring a guest solo by none other than Tony Iommi himself. Astoralus is probably the best song on the album, and yes, it's about a vast cosmic intergalactic octopus god, which makes it fucking cool. So, I know maybe I damned it with faint praise, but it's Candlemas, and even a mediocre Candlemas album is still a really good album. So, here's the trad doom picks for you: Kripp Sermon and Candlemas. Number 5, Mizmor, Cairn. Okay, so have you ever watched The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly? No? Okay, so here, go do that, and then come back. I'll be here, it's okay. But yeah, go do that and come right back.
3 hours later.
And that should be 3 hours, accounting for bathroom breaks now. Okay, awesome movie, right? Okay, I also bet you're really thirsty now. Yeah, okay, so that movie is kind of what I was thinking when I was listening to this album, where it's just this brutal, scorching, parched, forced march through a barren, blasted hellscape. It's just evocative of, that kind of thing. And most of you are probably thinking, why the hell would you listen to something like so harsh to the point it's almost like capital D daring you to keep going? And okay, I know at least one of you is like, man, I want in on that. That sounds cool. But it's because like film, I love things like art, when art is evocative like that, when you can come up, when you can like imagine or feel like you're in like a different zone or area. It's, even if it's not pleasant, you're still having an emotional response to a piece of art, and I think that's that's really kind of the point. So even though it's this horrible slog, like you're still responding to the album. And that's just the second track. It gets, there's some more traditional blacky doomy stuff in there. The first track of the album is a pretty standard black metal into doom song. And it's just that second song that gets really deserty and reminded me of this classic Clint Eastwood movie. So it's like, this black and doomy noise, and yeah, it's harsh. It's challenging, and not many people are gonna be really into that. But for those of you who are like, yeah, I want that, I want to get in on that. Like, it's very rewarding because it's, there's this sense of completion at the end. You have this sense where you can sit back and reflect on it, and be like, wow, that was actually pretty evocative, and I like that. So. Alternatively, if you still want your atmosphere and your black metal, but you don't want to go through, these harsh, drawn-out sojourns that are like, 18 minutes long, which I get. I don't always want to listen to Mizmor, but it's a good thing to, but it's nice to put on when you're in the mood. The new Bluetooth Nord album is fantastic. It's got tighter compositions. The songs are, like 5 minutes, 8 minutes. It's still kind of long, but the whole album's over in about 45. So it's a nice tight 45. You got the tight compositions. There's like the layered instruments where it all kind of blends into like one, sort of cohesive wall of sound. You have there's not really a lot of harsh vocals. There's more like ethereal chanting, and that gets layered too. And then when the harsh vocals come in, you're almost like not paying attention because you're already sucked into this this atmosphere of the album. And you get keyboards peppered in for good measure too. So it's a really deep engaging listen, and it's not. I mean, it's heavy. It's black metal, but it's not like dragging you forcefully through a desert. It's more like, the album's called Hallucinogen, so it's more like, it's not really like taking acid, but I would say it's arguably easier to listen to. Number 4, and this one is a tie because it's my list and I can do that. We have Big Business, The Beast That You Are, and Torch, Admission. Now, I think these two bands are, these were initially my first and alternate picks, but they're so similar in style that I think and they don't get talked about enough, I don't think. So I just wanted to lump them in at lump them in at 4 together and just fire them out because they're I don't know. These are cool bands. I wasn't really into the grunge scene of the '90s outside of Alice in Chains and Tad L7, but these bands I feel could have slotted right in there had they come out at the time and probably got really big. Although in Torch's case, they're basically the band Floor, who were around at that point in time and did not get as big as they deserved. So, I digress. Big Business is a drum and bass only duo from Seattle, so they're right there anyway. And they've always sort of been overshadowed by the Melvins. They're the Melvins' baby brother, but they're a little more accessible. So already you're like, hey, I'm into the Melvins. Okay, here's Big Business. They actually played. The members have actually been in the Melvins at times. So it's basically Melvins light. Hey, and if that appeals to you, then you're all right. Then go right ahead. If not, it's kind of weird, but I like it. It's it's sludgy and poppy at the same time. The opener, Abdominal Snowman, has this chorus that you think you're gonna be immediately into, and then there's a couple extra notes that kind of throw you off. And I think that sets the theme for the rest of the album. We're like, ooh, I like that. Playing on your expectations a bit. Towards the middle, it gets kind of slower, and you get this humid and hazy song called "Time and Heat," and then you get this the languid seasickness of "The More You Know," and these are songs that use their own, take their own time. The melodies take a little bit to sink in, but once you figure them out, they're really strong songs, and you find yourself humming them just apropos of nothing. And I like the way, again, I said they're a drum and bass duo. I'm a bass player, so I like it when a band can find a way to make the bass do different things, and they do this really well. There's a time that's got so many effects that it sounds maybe like a drunk mellotron, and that's so that's appealing to me. Again, they're Melvin's light basically. Torch, on the other hand, takes a more, I would say, punkier approach. A lot of their songs are under 2 minutes, but they've also got some 3.5 minute actual songs. But like I said, most of the members were in the band floor, and their hallmark was what they call the bomb string, which is basically just a deliberately broken B string. So when you hit it, it kind of like rumble, like it's got this really deep, unique rumble. So they bring that back, which is awesome, because that's something unique that is attuned to only them. It's the bomb string. And they've got these sub 2 minute blazers like From Here and What Was, that like you can just put on and they're over and done before you know it, but you remember them. And then they can like slide into things like these would have been big modern rock radio hits in the 90s tracks like Admission and Extremes of Consciousness, where again, if you were into grunge in the 90s, you're gonna love this band too. It's they call themselves like sludge pop, and I feel like that's accurate. It's like it's kind of like it's like oozy and heavy, but at the same time, it's got hooks aplenty. It's got melodies you can hum. It would have been great on, some of these songs could have fit right on rock radio. So, so that's my spiel on Torch and Big Business. Number 3, the official Roundo Trace. Up here we've got Nocturnus AD, Paradox. Now, space-themed death metal had a pretty big year too. Blood Incantation got a ton of press and took a lot of best album of the year awards from a lot of publications that I read. It's pretty good. I think it's a little overrated, but it's an alien themed album, The Hidden History of the Human Race. It's good, but again, I think it was a little overrated. Tomb Mold got into they joined the party by laying down some big Chungus riffs. The outro riff right after the false ending in their song Planetary Clairvoyance would have Bolt Thrower rolling over in their graves. Oh, dude, it is the biggest of Chungus riffs that I've heard this year. It's fantastic. But the one that's going to make this list is the one that probably, I guess, it speaks more to my personal taste. This album sounds like it was written and recorded in 1993, shelved in a dusty vault and then found and just released now. So a little background here, Nocturnus was a death metal band that put out an album called The Key in 1990. And basically they were like Morbid Angel with keyboards. And the concept of The Key was cyberistic future Satan goes back in time to kill baby Jesus, which is totally fucking metal. So they released a couple of Met albums after that. Split up. The band took the name rights away from the guy who founded the band. The guy who founded the band, Mike Browning, started playing death metal in a band called After Death, and all seemed to be well, that was lost. And then all of a sudden, now he comes back with tagging the AD on there, so to get around copyright laws from Nocturnus, also After Death, hey, AD, Nocturnus, AD, slam them all together, and somehow he comes up with this phenomenal ass old school death metal record that still sounds like early Morbid Angel with keyboards, which isn't surprising. Mike Browning actually did play in Morbid Angel before they got big, so there's that. But if you think that early Morbid Angel is fucking awesome, which you probably should, and you added keyboards, this album is totally for you. It's okay, and then there's probably some of you that are wait, but Morbid Angel is awesome without keyboards. Keyboards are silly. Why would I need that? So I'm going to direct you to The Bandar Sign, and you're going to listen to that track, and then when the keyboards just come screaming in to just violently transport you to through some cosmic hell portal into some faraway universe, you're going to be that's why keyboards are in this band. They're used mostly for background effect, some added layering, but there's those moments in Bandar Sign where they just add this fucking cool level, this new level to death metal. I also hear a lot of Killing Technology era Voivod in here, and that's always going to score points with me. So hey, Morbid Angel with keyboards influenced by Killing Technology era Voivod. This album is number 3. So speaking of legendary death metal bands that have come back from the dead and released really good albums when they had no real reason to, Possessed is actually resurrected themselves after 30 years. Tragically, the main man Jeff Becerra was shot and paralyzed. He actually doesn't have legs now, so that's why they weren't making any music, which sucks because he's awesome and they basically invented death metal. So anyway, they're back. They have a big album. It kicks a lot of ass. It leans more to the thrashier side of death metal, and unfortunately they couldn't get Larry Lalonde back to do guitar. He's too busy with Primus now, which is understandable. But the new Possessed album rips pretty hard. Number 2, Idle Hands, Mana. Fun fact about the vocal hit, it was invented in 1984 by Tom G. Warrior on the seminal classic metal album Morbid Tales by Celtic Frost. Now, why did I make that weird noise? Well, that's what we call a vocal hit, and Idle Hands uses it a fucking ton on their debut album, Mana. Other big vocal hits would include the Big Go in At the Gates Slaughter of the Soul track. You'll know it when you hear it. The vocal hit is basically a one-syllable noise used as an accent, like in certain passages, to, just like drive that point home. And you're going to hear that in every song, usually more than once, on this Idle Hands album. So, I don't know, I just think it's really cool. More bands need to use the vocal hit. Okay, so they're like a trad goth kind of rock metal. Basically, it's like if Joy Division wrote a metal album almost. Like, all the songs have themes of like sadness and depression and loss and suicide. The first song is about ritual sacrifice, and then the second song it segs into a ballad about losing a loved one. And you're like, oh, why? But it's fun. This album is like weirdly fun to listen to, despite all of that. It's like maybe it's like kind of like tongue in cheek. Like the band Sentence used to do that really well. Like kind of like have songs about like suicide, but they're like kitschy almost. So it's weird, but it's like these songs are like fun and poppy and catchy, and they're like about the most darkest shit. But like you'll be listening to. You'll be listening to some of these songs, and it's just like impossible to not just belt it out with them. I deliver mail on a college campus, so I drive around. There are times when I've been driving my golf cart around, and I'm just like unloading, the chorus to "Give Me to the Night," and I'm getting like judging stares from people. And like, "Fuck you, I'm into this. This is some kick-ass shit." Tell me, like, you listen to The Blade and The Will, and if you're not just like at the top of your lungs going, "Give me the power," then you're wrong, and like something's like you might not have a soul, because like that, it's just one of those like just a reflex moment where you're doing the invisible orange and singing it at the top of your lungs. So yeah, that's why it's number 2. Like, man, like you're just. Like, it's sad, but like you can't help it. It's just a brilliant album. It's a quick album. It's full of emotion, and like the whole album just rips. Like I said, it's like if Joy Division wrote a traditional metal album. Despite them not having a very good live show, they did open for King Diamond earlier this year, and they were kind of But the album's fantastic. So your alternate pick is Vara, Sables. And this is another band that's like, they feature current members of Dysrhythmia and KO Dot, like some avant-garde kind of music, which is also really good. Like all of this inspiration from this band comes directly from the 80s goth rock scene. This album actually sounds a lot like Pornography by The Cure. So if you like that album, you are guaranteed to just love this album too. It's synthy, it's deep, it's really kind of dark. With shades of like weird color almost, like I think with the synesthesia where you like hear color, but like you can kind of pick that up. But it's like, but yeah, it sounds an awful lot like those underrated Cure albums that don't have like a set single. So if you like them, you will like Vara. Okay, so now is the time where the big reveal. What was my favorite album of the year? If you know me, it should come as absolutely no surprise, because as someone who's very into ecology and the environment, I hold an environmental science degree. That's me, I'm a nature boy. Cattle Decapitation Death Atlas. Okay, so yes, I've heard the Greta Thunberg speech set to death metal, and while I like the idea of her message of we're fucking up the planet and we need to do better, I agree wholesale with that. I think that that song mashup is just sort of a novelty because there's an actual death metal band doing this eco death metal thing right, and they're doing it awesomely. Even if you want to remove yourself from these issues, this is just like solid, this is just a solid death metal album. Again, I know I said earlier I don't really like politics and music, but this is something that, you know, that's my field, that's my forte, this is something that appeals to me, so of course I'm going to like really be into this. Really, if you're into death metal, this album's going to hinge on, the kicker is going to be whether or not you like Travis Ryan's uniquely raspy, high-pitched, clean vocals, because he does that a lot. Like, just about every song's got a clean from him, which obviously I'm into it. I think it creates a very good contrast between his like these guttural growls and, you know, just the typical death metal barks. I like hearing that sort of variety in my death metal. I mean, there's a time and place for, you know, monotone grunting. Like that Tomb Mold album I mentioned earlier is fucking cool. But like, but that's why it didn't, you know, make number one. Number one is it's, you know, it's got this multifaceted sort of sound to it. So, you know, like I like it because, you know, it's a unique sound. It's enunciated clearly, and when you're dealing with topics of importance like this, it helps to be able to understand what they're saying, instead of having to grab a lyric sheet and read along. And like he occasionally has a penchant to roll his R's a little bit, like Peter Steele used to do, only like maybe like Peter Steele and Helium. So I think, yeah, you know, the point of the songs gets driven home that like, hey, we as humans need to do a much better job of taking care of the planet, because right now we're fucking up royally. And I'm not going to get like deep into that. That is a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, and I'm just trying to talk to you about music I like. But I mean, that's what this album's about. I totally agree with it. So what about musically? Musically, it's fantastic. It's like it's crushingly heavy. It's death metal, but it's somehow still like really accessible. Like, you know, the riffs, like you can, and it takes a couple listens, but the riffs, like, you know, you'll remember them. You know, each song, again, like Bad Religion, it has identity. You know that, like, you know, one song doesn't like bleed into another. You know that every song's kind of different. They each have a unique little marker. You know, Bring Back the Plague has this really cool like bridge. Geocide had, you know, has a nice chorus. Death Atlas, the closer, is like 9 minutes long. You know, there's a lot of variety throughout, but it all kind of, you know, but it never, you know, leans one way or the other. It's pretty cohesive, but still unique. So again, Death Atlas by Cattle Decapitation, favorite album of the year, hands down. That's the one that I guarantee is going to have legs. It's, the other flaw of list making at the end of the year is you don't know how long you're going to be with these albums. Some of them might fall out of rotation. Some of them will keep, you know, some of them will stay with you for a while. You never know. So, like, you know, it's just a crapshoot. But as far as this year is concerned, that's the one I ended up listening to the most, and it just came out in like late November, so I was already like real into it. Looking ahead to next year, what am I excited for? My Dying Bride is about to put out an album in March. I'm a huge My Dying Bride fan, so I'm already excited for that. Paradise Lost and Carcass are supposed to have new albums out, so I'm excited to see what they can do this year. Other than that, I'm not too sure. You know, it's still pretty early. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, give yourself a hand. Maybe check out some of those albums I talked about down in the comments. Let me know what you like this year. Seriously, let's have a discussion. Let's talk about music. Again, I like reading lists because I like to see what maybe I missed. So yes, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We've got a lot of cool stuff on our normal channel. We will see you on the regular episodes. Peace.